And you are live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Chief. Good evening. My name is Jason Pro, Chairman, and I call to order this April 11, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. This open meeting is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of June 16, 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may go to Northborough Remote Meetings on the town website. You will find the YouTube link there. That YouTube link is also posted on our agenda. And additionally on the agenda, we have the Zoom webinar link. We have the phone number to call in to participate on the Zoom webinar by audio only. And this meeting is being carried by local cable access television government channels Verizon 30 and Charter 192. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. Unless such participation is required by law, this meeting will feature public comment. Now I'd like to confirm access of members who will be participating this evening. Board members, when I call your name, please unmute and respond in the affirmative. I am Jason Pro, Chairman. Vice Chair Leslie Rutan.
Present.
Clerk Scott Rogers.
Present.
Member Julianne Hirsch.
Present.
And member Kristen Wickstead.
Present.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to confirm the access of staff members who will be participating in the call this evening. We have Town Administrator John Coderre.
Present.
We have Town Planner Lori Connors.
Present.
We have Police Chief William Liver.
Present.
And we have Fire Chief and our Zoom host for the evening, David Parenti.
Present.
We are waiting for the entry of Assistant Town Administrator Becca Meekins. We anticipate that she might be connecting shortly. We'll proceed with the meeting. Ground rules. As chair, I will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda to make a presentation or speak to their application. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others, please request to do so through the chair. And each vote taken by the board this evening will be conducted by roll call. When we reach the public comment item on the agenda, I will go over the means of doing that. And I believe that concludes our meeting preliminaries. So let us begin.
Shane is here. Shane is in the waiting room.
Very good. I'm going to bring him in.
Mr. Chair, do you want to do minutes first?
Yes, that would be a wonderful idea, Leslie. Sorry. First item on the agenda would be the approval of March 28, 2022 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the March 28, 2022 meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved by Leslie Rutan, seconded by Scott Rogers. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Leslie Rutan.
Aye.
And I, Jason Pro, vote aye. Minutes are approved unanimously. It's past the hour of 7 p.m. and the item on our agenda is William Liver, Police Chief, the appointment of Shane Gilman as police officer. Welcome, Chief, and welcome, Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're here tonight to present to you Shane Gilman. He was a very successful candidate in our most recent sort of interviews in our hiring process. He's Clinton native. Currently, as you can see, and I mentioned he's working part-time for the Clinton Police Department as a dispatcher. And not too long ago, they were in the middle of a fire, so if he has to leave, he's going to have to get up and go. We found Shane through the university, Fitchburg State University's 4+1 program, where he is a four-year student. He's graduating with his bachelor's degree at the end of the month. And then he'll be going to immediately into the Fitchburg State University Police Academy. which is a fully sanctioned Municipal Police Training Council police academy. Part of the vetting process and all of the things that we would have had to have incurred the cost for, such as medical exams and other things. Shane has already paid that as part of his program. So he's well on his way. He'll be graduating in September, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And again, he's got a leadership role in his academy class. He's a squad leader. I actually bumped into him, first met him at the, they had a professional, excuse me, the word will lose me at the moment, but it was an open house for law enforcement agencies and students in the criminal justice program. He's an imposing figure at 6'5". He makes me look small, but you know, a lacrosse player at that. And without further ado, I would, again, he's passed most of everything that we need to. That'd be the standard conditions on his letter of appointment as far as completing his successful probationary period, academy backgrounds and things like that. So again, I present to you Shane Gilman.
Thank you very much, Chief. Shane, would you like to offer a few words?
Hi, how's it going, everybody? I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity. I'm very excited to join the Northborough Police Department. It's been a really good ride so far. Chief Liver is very good. I've spoken to him a couple of times after our interview about the Northborough Police Department, more about the town. And the more I speak to him, the more I'm getting to like the town and really truly see why he truly enjoys working there. After speaking to the selectmen too during the meeting, I can see why everyone really vouches for Northborough and why it's a great community to live in. So I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to getting on.
Great. Thank you very much, Shane. Considering that Shane is in the process of working here and maybe called away abruptly, I wonder if I could ask the board to perhaps offer the motion so that he's present to see that happen.
Okay, Mr. Chair. I
Yes.
move the board vote to appoint Shane Gilman as full-time police officer effective July 1st, 2022.
Second.
Moved by Leslie Rattan, seconded by Julian Hirsch. Any discussion? Leslie.
I just want to say real quickly, Shane, thank you so much for your interest in Northborough. Thank you for interviewing with us. The first word that comes to mind is that you're busy. Got a lot going on, and we appreciate all your efforts and everything you're doing to become, maximizing your credentials for us. So we appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. This is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead.
Aye.
Julian Hirsch.
Aye.
Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Leslie Rattan.
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, vote aye. So congratulations, Shane. The appointment is effective. And now I'd like to invite board members, now that we've disposed of that, if they have any other comments that they would like to make, happy to do it, to take those comments now. I can certainly offer my comments. I was on the interview panel when Shane came in, and just very, very favorably impressed. I did recognize his lacrosse background. A couple of my sons played lacrosse in high school, and we had a little discussion about which position he played. Turns out he's even faster than I expected, playing the long stick mid. But just an excellent presentation in the interview, excellent qualifications, and just very much looking forward to having you in town and working with the force. So welcome. Happy to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
If there's nothing more, Kristen, did you have something?
I was just going to say welcome too. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Shane, we wish you well. Good luck at the academy, and we'll look forward to seeing you back in town, ready to roll.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
You.
Hope your night's a little quieter.
Yeah, right.
Very good. And next up, we have Town Planner Lori Connors' presentation regarding Chapter 40A, Section 3A, which encourages MBTA communities to adopt zoning districts where multifamily zoning is permitted as of right. Welcome, Lori.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Of course, as you just mentioned, I'm here to talk about the multifamily requirements that were incorporated into the Zoning Act in January 2021. I'm going to share my screen if I may. I have a PowerPoint presentation. So
Yes,
if you
please-
can
please do
provide
so.
me with that.
You should be able to, Lori.
Okay. I'm not seeing that. One moment.
Yeah, right down the
There it
bottom.
is.
There you
I
go.
got it.
There
I
you go.
got it. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
All right. All right, so the backdrop to the changes to 40A are concerns about Massachusetts housing crisis, which of course has been in the news for a number of years now. This housing crisis has driven housing prices to astronomical and unsustainable levels, particularly within the Route 495 Beltway. The Department of Housing and Community Development estimates that the state is short by 200,000 housing units. And the folks who are mostly impacted by that shortage are low and middle income households. So although the Economic Development Bill included a number of changes that impact housing production in Massachusetts, tonight I'm here to talk to you specifically about the new Section 3A of the Zoning Act, which requires MBTA communities to adopt a zoning district which allows multifamily homes to be constructed by right. So right now, Northborough allows multifamily housing in 3 zoning districts: the downtown neighborhood, the downtown business, and the business west districts. But a special permit is required in all of these districts, except that up to 4 units are permitted by right in the downtown neighborhood district. So this would be a change for Northborough. There are 175 municipalities that are subject to the new law. And mostly these are communities that have either MBTA service or commuter rail service. But then there are a number of communities that are classified as MBTA adjacent communities, and Northborough falls within this category. So what that means is that it is a community that doesn't have a transit station within its borders, but it abuts a community that does. So the law requires each MBTA community to have a district of reasonable size. So what that means is that they want a district that allows 15 units per acre to be permitted as of right. Now, that means that it can't be permitted by special permit. So this would be a change for the town of Northborough. But a lot of the protections would still be in place because the law does allow the community to require site plan review, which really is the bulk of the intensive level of review that the planning board does of a multifamily development. So you'll still be allowed to look at traffic, mitigating impacts, the design, the layout, open space protection, pedestrian access, and the like. So it does have a requirement for the minimum size that can be included within the district, and that is 50 acres of land. But it does allow overlay districts. So what that means is there can be multiple locations within the town that are included within the overlay district. So there are a couple of caveats to that. And what that is that the one area within the 50-acre piece has to be 25 contiguous acres. And the smallest area can be no smaller than 5 contiguous acres. So here are some pictures of what 15 units per acre can look like in various locations throughout Massachusetts. So a lot of these towns are familiar to you folks, of course. And the important thing to note is that there can be multiple housing types within this district. So the district can contain single-family homes, duplexes, townhouses, garden-style apartment buildings, and mixed-use buildings. It can also feature sub-districts that have different density requirements, as long as they average over the course of the 50-acre parcel, 15 units per acre. So this is a little bit complicated, but very interesting. They do provide some flexibility for how that happens. So the district doesn't have to include vacant land only. For example, we could include the Avalon development, which consists of 382 multifamily dwelling units spread over 42 acres of land. So Avalon Northborough has a current residential density of 9 units per acre. So the town could also include additional developed and undeveloped parcels within the overlay district to meet the shortfall of 368 units and increase the density to 15 units per acre. For example, 238 West Main Street, which is otherwise known as Whitney Place, contains 171 units on 7.4 acres. And the housing authority units behind the library and an abutting parcel of land to that can accommodate 102 units on less than 6 acres. So these equate to a density of 24 units per acre and 17 units per acre, respectively. So when you combine Avalon, Whitney Place, and the other properties together, they create an overall density of 12 units per acre spread over 56 acres. So to make up the shortfall in units and the minimum required density of 15 units per acre, the overlay district could include undeveloped land or an underutilized building within the town that would allow the remaining units to be at a density that is higher than 15 units per acre. So of course, what you're trying to do is over the course of the district, so it could be 50 acres, it could be 60 acres, it could be 70 acres, you want to achieve the 15 units per acre. So there are specific requirements within the guidance that was provided by the Department of Housing and Community Development for where these districts should be. So ideally, if you are a community that has a transit station within it or within half a mile of it, then that is where you should have your multifamily district. But Northborough isn't one of those communities, so we have to look at alternative locations. And DHCD did say that in that case, they prefer it to be in a village center, like Northborough Center, or in a location that has underutilized buildings. Like, for example, if you had an abandoned mill building or a school building, for example, that would be an acceptable location according to the guidance. But the guidance does have certain stipulations in place. They want to ensure that the new multifamily units are family friendly. A lot of communities, when they are requiring multifamily homes, they put limitations on the number of bedrooms and the size of the units, because of course they figured out that 3-bedroom or apartments that have 3 or more bedrooms tend to attract families, and 2 or fewer bedrooms do not. So the guidance says you can't do that. That's a no-no. The town can put no stipulations on these things. So an important note is that the draft guidelines are not a requirement to actually build any units. It simply requires communities to change the use and dimensional charts in their zoning bylaws to allow multifamily housing by right, subject to site plan review, instead of by special permit. So if you think about the industrial zoning in town, of course, areas of town were zoned industry in the 1960s, but they weren't actually occupied by industry, fully occupied, until just recently. And I understand that there are still a couple of parcels available. So there is no timeline for when this could occur. It could be 50 years, it could be 100 years. So there is no stipulation like that. And another thing about these guidelines is that it has absolutely nothing to do with Chapter 40B. So there is no affordability requirement that is part of this change to the law. So what are the consequences if Northborough decides to pass on this change to Chapter 40A? Unfortunately, there is a bit of a hammer, and the hammer is that the town would not be eligible to apply for various grant programs. So a couple of these programs are kind of undefined at this point. So the local capital projects fund, I could not find any grants that are currently associated with that fund. But that's not to say that that could very well change in the next year or two. But the MassWorks infrastructure program in particular is one that I have had tremendous success in the past. In fact, of course, you know that I was the planning director for the town of Millbury, and we did a downtown revitalization project. And we received $1.1 million in construction funding through the MassWorks infrastructure program for downtown revitalization. It is also a fantastic grant program. If the town is ever interested in expanding its municipal water and sewer infrastructure, so if there was a development that the town was interested in servicing, the MassWorks infrastructure program is a great way to fund that. The Housing Choice Initiative is not something that Northborough is currently eligible for. It is essentially a pool of grant money that is specifically allocated to communities that are growing very rapidly. So the town would have had to have experienced significant housing growth over the last 5 years in order to qualify for that grant program. So that's not something that I'm particularly concerned with at this time. And then of course, DHCD put in one of those kind of, well, if I can't capture you this way, then I may grab you in another way, because there are other grant programs that they provide, and they may or may not decide to penalize communities that do not comply with the multifamily requirements. So there is a timeline for implementation, and this presentation that I'm giving you tonight is part of the implementation schedule. So I had to give you this briefing by May 2nd, and then I have to submit a community information form. And then there are also other tasks that the town would have to comply with over the next period of time. But the really important date is December 31st, 2024. That is the deadline for implementing the new zoning. And then of course, March 31st, 2025 is the deadline for us to submit the compliance paperwork with DHCD. So we do have a little over 2 years to comply with this requirement. There's a whole bunch of wonderful resources out there that can provide more information if you're interested about the changes to 40A, as well as the guidance that was put out by the Department of Housing and Community Development. Right now, this guidance is draft guidance. The deadline for submitting comments to the Department of Housing and Community Development was the end of March. So they're in the process of reviewing the comments that they received from various communities. And then they're going to modify the guidance to kind of answer those questions and provide additional clarity and hopefully address some of the concerns that communities had. So I am going to put this PowerPoint presentation up on the Planning Department webpage tomorrow, or possibly the day after that. So if folks are interested in looking over the presentation, then you'll be able to find it on the Planning Department page, or you can certainly contact me via email and I would be happy to send it along to you. So that's pretty much it. And this is my contact information if anybody wants to give me a call or send me an email. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Great, Lori, thank you very much. So this is satisfying one of the intermediate steps here, the presentation of the Board of Selectmen for our awareness of the program. And then there's some paperwork, I guess, additionally that goes with this by May 2nd, was it?
Correct.
For this intermediate step. And then just to go back again and ask, you mentioned Avalon Bay and 2 other existing facilities in town that would all contribute to this unit count, I guess it would be.
Yes, so they could. So we are about to embark on a planning process to determine where the most appropriate location is for this district. And there are a lot of ideas about where the district could be. And certainly I have some ideas of my own, and planning board members have expressed some ideas about where they would like to see it. So what I envision over the course of the next, well, at least 6 months, we will be determining how best to comply, if the decision is to go forward with a multifamily district. And so those are just some ideas. I know that folks are concerned. When I first heard about this zoning change, I was concerned about the impact to communities of Northborough's size. Certainly 750 units is a big ask. And as I learned more about the change, I realized that because you can include existing multifamily housing developments, it really isn't as much of an ask as it initially appeared. So like I said, we'll be doing a planning process. There'll be opportunities to provide feedback and input. So I look forward to certainly your involvement and hearing your thoughts. If you happen to have any thoughts this evening that you would like to share, I'd be happy to listen.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. If I could ask you perhaps to stop sharing so I can get everybody back in view on one screen here. There you go. Thank you. Members of the board, do you have any questions at this time? Julianne?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. So when you talk about site plan review, would that be by the zoning board or planning board?
That would be by the planning board. So it's a very similar process that the planning board currently goes through whenever it's reviewing a multifamily development. So the only difference is that as long as the development complies with the regulations and the design standards set forth in site plan review, then they pretty much should get approval. So there's less power that the planning board would have to deny a project. And it would also be, instead of a supermajority vote, so 4 out of 5 yes votes, it would be 3 out of 5 yes votes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Any other members? Yes, Leslie.
All right, thank you very much. So obviously they're making it very clear with their penalties that they really want communities to adopt this. And we obviously have more latitude because we're not an adjacent community as far as where these.
So, yes. So the differences between the different thresholds or categories of communities has to do with the density. So the 750 units is the smallest requirement, believe it or not, out of the 4 categories of requirements. So if we were a community, like for example, Milton, I grew up in the town of Milton, which is directly on the red line. Then the requirement for the town of Milton is significantly more than the requirement for Northborough. There's a recognition that they have better infrastructure and can certainly handle the density better than a community like Princeton that has no municipal sewer, but is also an MBTA adjacent community.
Okay, is there also another question? Do they provide, or is there some sort of consultant that is on hand so that if we have questions, you know, before we bark up the wrong tree, that we can ask questions of to be sure that we're in compliance?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. So there is a planning grant that specifically targets communities that are MBTA communities. So there's technical assistance that's available through the planning grant, and the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission is also providing technical assistance to communities who are interested.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Leslie? Yes, John.
Sorry, Lori, we didn't have a chance to chat about this question, which just came to mind here. I'm just curious if anybody in any of the planning forums have you seen anybody making the argument about an unfunded mandate? Obviously, this kind of density is going to have impacts on public safety and the school department. May require redistricting. You know, when we had Avalon Bay come in, it had a significant impact on our operations, and we negotiated mitigation. I'm just curious if anybody's made the argument that this is an unfunded mandate, and do you know if that is being reviewed at the state level?
Yes, absolutely. In particular, communities that don't have sewer have expressed a lot of concern about how they're going to be able to handle this density of 15 units per acre without a sewer system, and very, very much concerned about if the state is going to put forward money to pay for the establishment of a municipal sewer system. So I know that that's part of their review. And there is possibility that there'll be some retreat on the guidelines. So right now they're draft guidelines. So it is possible that they will loosen up some of the requirements when the final guidelines come out, which is anticipated to be sometime mid to late summer. So we'll know more then.
Yeah, just as a reminder to the board, when Avalon Bay went in, we had extensive discussions about mitigation and the impact, particularly on the schools if you're looking at, Avalon Bay, I believe has about 70 school-age children. So that's 382 units. And those were units in development that the town put very strict constraints on the number of bedrooms for. And 25% of the units are also affordable. So that was a friendly 40B negotiated with the town, and Avalon Bay provided a significant amount between Avalon Bay and the mall was, I believe, about $2.4 million in mitigation provided to the town. So in recognition of the impacts, both from the capital as well as the operating. So, this could have some pretty significant operating impacts for us. And I would view it or make the argument that this is an unfunded mandate, and under the Mass General Law, the state is supposed to compensate us for that if this is something that they would like from a policy standpoint. So just something to keep in mind as this discussion unfolds, that it's going to have no matter how you implement it, it will have impacts on us, and those impacts should be weighed very carefully against what we might miss out on in terms of any potential grants. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you, John. Board members, any other questions? Kristen?
So I'm just going to take an optimistic turn here. It looked, well, looking at the pictures you shared, thank you for that presentation, by the way, and nice to meet you, Laurie.
It's nice
Actually
to
met
meet
you
you as
yet. But looking at the pictures that you shared, that was a great detail for me to kind of understand what the possibilities for this are. And I hope that you and the planning board and whoever else is involved in this, your planning department, I'm not sure who that is besides you, but it sounds like when we're also talking about our master plan implementation committee is also talking about changes and opportunities in our downtown. Maybe this could somehow work together with that, and it might end up being a really good thing. So anyway, thank you for a really good presentation.
One of the interesting things about making a walkable downtown is that you really need a mass of people who live within walking distance of your downtown, because these are the people who are going to create the walkable kind of atmosphere.
Yes.
And that means most likely multifamily homes. And then when you construct multifamily homes, so if there were a developer who was interested in doing a multifamily development within the downtown, and the timing kind of matched with downtown revitalization activities, then that would be a perfect MassWorks grant project, because what they like to see is a public-private partnership. So they like to see private investment be part of your project, and it makes for a very competitive project. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it may join up very well with the downtown revitalization project and the potential to fund that.
Great. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Scott Rogers.
Julianne was up before me. Go ahead and take her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Julianne?
I already had a turn, so.
Okay, I'm coming back to Scott then.
All
No more changes.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of ask a question about that, leveraging Lori. I know the master plan, the scope of work for the master plan downtown study is out there. Is that, I can't remember if that incorporates some of these ideas, knowing that this requirement was coming down. Is that included in our scope of services there?
I don't know if, of course, when the master plan was done, they probably didn't know about this coming down the pike. But certainly as part of the scope of work for the visioning, this is going to be part of the discussion. So
Great.
There's a need to define where exactly the downtown should be. So that's one of the first questions that need to be answered. But from what I understand from my conversations with various individuals on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, there is absolutely an understanding that multifamily housing, mixed use, commercial multifamily housing will be part of the redevelopment.
Excellent, thanks.
Thanks, Scott. And Julia?
Yes, okay, so just so I'm clear with the timeline, I mean, I know that you have certain benchmarks, it's certain dates that you have to, you know, achieve some, you know, your meetings and whatnot, but for us, so the like over the next 6 months, you and planning board will be discussing the best places to have this change in zoning, and then that will ultimately go to town meeting?
It will, absolutely. Yep, so there'll be public participation. I'm not exactly sure what the format will be at this point because we're just at the very, very early stages. But there will absolutely, over the next several months, be lots of discussion and work with technical experts about the shape of the multifamily district. And then, of course, there'll be public hearings associated with that. And then it'll be ultimately voted at town meeting.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, anything more? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Lori. Appreciate the presentation tonight.
Thanks, Lori.
Certainly
Thank
a big ticket item in some sense over the next few years to figure this out. And just one more question, I guess. As you mentioned, the end result, or at least the first end result, is simply to get the district area defined and the zoning bylaws updated to enable that, right? And then
Right.
at some point further forward would be decisions about actually implementing housing under that particular bylaw.
Well, like I said, there is no implementation requirement.
Mhm.
So the development sector will be saddled with the requirement to construct. So it's just a matter of changing the zoning bylaws to enable it. And then the private development community will come forward with a development proposal, or they won't. So it's just a matter of kind of waiting to see. If the town were interested in making something happen, like for example, I know there's been talk about moving the town hall to the historic town hall, and that would free up the current town hall building for something else. So the town could take an active role by deciding that they were going to put up this this building for adaptive reuse as a multifamily structure. So the town could take a proactive role, but doesn't need to. It's not obligated as part of this zoning change.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification.
All right.
If there's nothing more, thank you very much. Appreciate the information and I look forward to the updates.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Lori.
Sorry.
This brings us to reports. Begin with Kristen Wickstead.
Okay. So my report on April 11th. The Cultural Council, this is usually Julianne's thing, but she was away this weekend, so I got to do the fun thing. They established a public art exhibit that is now going on at Ellsworth McAfee Park called Go Outdoors. There are several actual doors painted by artists standing along the walkway on the far side of the park over by the woods. So if you're there, you should definitely check them out. Hard to miss them. They're doors. The Algonquin Harbinger printed its first paper issue in 2 years. I have a little sign to myself to hold it up. Here it is. Look at that. It's 46 pages. And according to teachers and students alike, excellent quality writing and interesting stories. And it's pretty exciting that they, the front says COVID 2 years later. So I'm really looking forward to reading it. I just got a copy of it this evening. So congratulations to the newspaper kids. I attended the Youth Commission meeting last week. It was very productive and we'll be hearing from them soon. Northborough Helping Hands, which loans medical equipment for no charge. Well, they do lots of things, but the medical equipment branch of what they do could really use supplies right now. So if you have, anybody has crutches, walkers, ramps, wheelchairs, any kind of shower seat, anything like that, that they don't need and they could donate to the Helping Hands, you should email them at info@northboroughhelpinghands.org. And so my quote tonight is from Dale Carnegie. Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. Just thought that was a nice quote. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Next up, Julianne Hirsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, is it fair to ask Kristen where a person could get a copy of the Harbinger?
I got it actually at the high school because I was there for a certain volleyball game, but you can also subscribe to it and they will mail it to you, and you can just go on their website and do that if that would be easier for you. Or you
Okay,
can ask a friend to pick up a copy for you. You know, lots of options.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so for my report, yes, congratulations to the Cultural Council. I got so many people said that it was just a lot of fun and a great community event. And thanks, Kristen, for standing in. And I also attended the Personnel Committee meeting where they reviewed the classification and compensation plan and report under our Assistant Town Administrator's guidance. And of note is that a couple of positions were given new and more updated titles. Also, I just want to remind people, I mentioned this before, but the Westboro Sustainable Committee is sponsoring an energy fair April 30th from 1 to 5. They are expecting about 30 exhibitors and 7 speakers. So if you are thinking at all about immediately or in the future doing some green sustainable projects in your home, this could be the place that you could get a lot of information in one day. It's also on their Facebook page, which is Sustainable Westboro. And my last item is a question for all of us. I guess we are certain that town meeting will be indoors, and I haven't seen much advertising. Is this going to go up on the electronic sign in town, on our website, so people know? You know, there's a lot of new people who need to be reminded that town meeting is April 25th.
John, would you care to respond to that?
So the warrant was posted today. It was posted physically as required under the bylaw and up on the webpage. And then typically a week before, we'll send out a town news, and we usually put up the bulletin boards, the traffic signs, at least in the center of town.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Next, Scott Rogers.
Yeah, thank you. So just want to commend the Financial Planning Committee, Appropriations Committee for their week-on-week compression of the schedule that led to town budget and being able to complete the warrant on time. So along with those committee meetings, also attended or interacted with planning board and earthworks. And as Julianne mentioned, the personnel board completed their classification and compensation study. And of course, that feeds right into warrant article as well. So a lot of work by departments and staff to get us ready for town meeting, April 25th, 6 p.m. Algonquin Regional High School. That ends my report.
Thank you very much, Scott. Leslie Rattan.
Okay, I wanted to thank both of the chiefs for their monthly reports. In the police report from Chief Liber, we were told of a new dispatcher who will begin work effective April 14th. Her name is Allie Gardell. That's very exciting news, I think. Thank you again for the statistics and the nice letters of appreciation and thank you that he usually puts at the end of the report. It's nice to see those as well. Also, Chief Parenti, same kind of thing with statistics, including mutual aid and a lot of other interesting pieces of information. Also letters of thanks to that department. Let's see, I noticed there are a lot of comments from people who are looking forward to the completion of Assabet Park. And from what I understand and talking to the DPW director, it looks like it's on schedule for Memorial Day. I don't know if anything has changed, but it looks like it's proceeding nicely. John, do we know if it's still on?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, it looks wonderful. Just the way it's shaped now and the fact that there will be new tables, I guess in the upper area. The splash pad will remain the same. But I know a lot of people are looking very forward to that. And I wanted to mention again that the Be Well Northborough, take a look at the upcoming events on the town website. There's outdoor yoga, for example, on Sundays from May 8th to June 5th. And let's see something else. Mindful living. There's just a lot of different things. And I think it's a wonderful initiative by the town with all the town departments working together to come up with some wonderful things for people to get involved in after COVID has really kept us all locked up. So I just want to thank all those town department and the staff for that. I think it's a wonderful thing. So that ends my report.
Thank you very much, Leslie. I've had a couple of chaotic weeks. There's a quote, Kristen. You might know the quote. I just know the words. I don't know who it comes from. He flung himself from the house. He flung himself upon his horse and rode madly off in all directions. So that's basically been my life for the last couple of weeks between day job and some family stuff and everything. The one item I will mention is I was able to stop in at the Culture Councilor's door arts presentation on Sunday. And I'm certainly glad they moved it because Saturday was, as they said, total washout, but Sunday was very pleasant. And it's very interesting to speak to some of the artists, and they were explaining kind of their process in choosing what they did and constructing their doors and what it represented. Just very, very interesting work, very impressive artwork. So that was a very positive event, and I look forward to more Be Well events, and I certainly encourage people to go out and take a look if they haven't done so already. That pretty much, yes, Kristen?
That was actually not a Be Well event, and I was told to mention that when I gave my little speech by the cultural.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's part of just their regular thing.
I get it.
Yeah.
I see. Yep. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Certainly it was an event that helped me be well a little bit. So served the purpose regardless of the sponsorship or the program. And that ends my report. John, anything?
Nothing this evening.
Very good. We now move on to public comment. If you are online on the Zoom webinar and would like to comment, you can raise your hand. I'll just first note that when we bring you in for public comment, we'll ask you first to state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes to present your concern. The board does not really entertain any deliberation or discussion of items presented. If there's a relatively straightforward informational question that town staff can answer, we will strive to do that. Remind everyone that everyone involved here is trying to serve the best interests of the town as they understand it, and we may have differing opinions about that. We ask everyone to present themselves in a professional and courteous and respectful manner when commenting. So, having said that, is there anyone who would like to comment this evening? We have Dr. Rudiger Volk. Oh, sorry. Let me try that again. I'm sorry, Dr. Volk. What I'm going to do is promote you to panelist to bring you in. Your Zoom version, I guess, is older and doesn't have a certain feature here. So I'm going to bring you in as a panelist.
Yes.
Look,
Yeah.
hello, Dr. Volk, could you please state your full name and address, please?
My name is Rudiger Volk. I live in 137 East Main Street in Northborough.
Thank you, sir. Please proceed.
Yes, I want only to, not actually the items which were addressed tonight, but more the Section 8 housing, 8 units, which were addressed, I think, also last time, and where the housing, public housing demand $1.44 million from the town of Northborough. I would consider that what is to cancel in was the $1.44 million is on the burden of what the town administrator emphasized is on the resident. It's not a required item, and the town might be sensitized to go forward to it because they get $1 million grant, but nevertheless $1.44 million are depleting all the capital funds of the town, and we are living right now in the in brink of an economic downfall, particularly of a residential real estate market downfall. So this in perspective. Yes, so that's basically the other big item for the American Recovery Funds, where the town could invest is in sustainable energy, which we mentioned today, with placing solar cells over parking lots, providing two purposes. One is, of course, long-term energy utility savings for the town, and then also shadow for climate higher temperature in the future. So these are the two big items which I want to put out tonight. Thank you very much for my voice.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And next up, I have Lisa Maselli. Lisa?
Good evening. This is Lisa Maselli at 13 Maple Street. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm calling because I've been noticing that the White Cliffs front chimney is crumbling. Pieces of it have fallen off the chimney and onto the lower roof and on the ground. It's been like that for at least 2 weeks with no shoring it up. And the top part of the chimney is sure to come down shortly thereafter without any support on the side. I'm concerned and a little confused because I thought that one of the meetings they had already set aside funding to do the repointing of the chimneys right after they did the roof, and that was at least a year and a half ago. So we were charged in 2016 to preserve this building, and it should be a historic landmark. We haven't been able to yet pull its landmark ability, and if it's continuing to fall apart as it is, I would say that the envelope was not buttoned up properly and that there's a lot of moisture coming in that would cause that mortar to crumble. I'd like to know when we're going to start to get over there and fix it, or at least make sure that the rest of that top chimney doesn't fall out before the rest of it can be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. John, would you like to?
Yeah, just by way of update. So we're well aware of that. We've had masons out there. I actually signed a contract to shore up the chimney about 2 weeks ago. But once they get out there, they're investigating the extent of the chimney. It's been known that this chimney from the moment we took over the building, that was compromised. The committee decided not to move forward with repointing or rebuilding that chimney due to the cost. So right now we have masons out there looking at what potentially needs to be done right now. So, but it is being addressed.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Someone else like to comment this evening? Very well, thank you. Public comment
Mr.
is
Chairman,
concluded.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask that we comment on an email from the resident mentioning that the COVID numbers are ticking up somewhat, and just so we can be assured from our health agent that we're still in the same place when we voted on an indoor meeting? Has there been any comment from Kristen Black about numbers or anything like that?
John, can you address?
Yeah, so I met with Kristen about an hour ago and nothing's changed materially in her opinion.
Okay.
It's something we'll continue to monitor as we approach town meeting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Let's see. On to new business. We have execution of Massachusetts State Subdivision Agreement for statewide opioid settlements. John, would you care to explain what we're doing?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This is a project we've been working on for well over a year, working with town council as well as the Mass Municipal Association. This dates back a couple of years when it's actually the communities that took action against the opioid distributors and manufacturers. It's interesting that the municipalities banding together are the ones that actually won the legal battle, and the judge decided to provide the settlement to the Attorney General's office. So it was actually the towns that did this, not necessarily the Attorney General's office. But the Attorney General's office now is involved in the settlement. So probably for the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 months, working with the MMA and through communications from Northborough to the Attorney General's office. Originally, the AG's office had said they were going to split. This is a $525 million settlement, and they were going to split it 15% going to the municipalities, the entities that basically won the settlement. So we weren't too happy about that. So after a very long battle going back and forth, ultimately that was changed to a 60-40 split with the municipalities. So municipalities now, under the proposal that the AG's put out, would get 210 of the 525 million directly. Now, the balance, the $60 million, will go through an opioid recovery and remediation fund that'll be managed by a task force committee at the state level. It's 20 people, 10 of which will be appointed municipal officials. So we're very confident that we'll continue to get a good say in the other 60% of the funds. But what's before you this evening is the town of Northborough, just like all municipalities, are being asked to sign off on the settlement agreement, which would distribute 40% of those funds to municipalities. I spoke with the Attorney General the Assistant Attorney General, who is in charge of this litigation, last Thursday, and it depends on how the settlement is structured, because it's not an equal payment. So there's several different entities that are involved. Some want to pay it up front, some want to stretch it out. So how it's going to get distributed isn't still set. I did see a spreadsheet. The first payment that they're looking at is July, I believe, of this year, and it's in the $50,000 range. But as you look out over the years of the settlement, it's I think what Northborough is looking at something in the mid to low 30s. Again, the final numbers haven't been put out there yet, so they're still subject to change. So at this point, I had actually sent in all the paperwork. I've been tracking and on top of this from the beginning, we have not signed off. I refused to sign off on the 15% on behalf of the town, working with the MMA and town council. So now it's reached that critical mass where over half of the communities have agreed to this. The MMA is in agreement as well in terms of the 60-40 split, given the way the other 60% will be distributed. So at this point in time, it's appropriate. The settlement isn't going to get any better. It's done because the majority of communities have signed off on it. So at this point, it'd be appropriate for the town of Northborough to sign off on the agreement with the Attorney General's office. And then there's a lot of information and a lot of links to information on the Attorney General's office website with regard to frequently asked questions. I guess the bottom line, what everybody's asking at this point is going to be, well, how's the money going to get distributed and how is it going to be allocated and used? And so I spoke with the Deputy Commissioner from the Department of Revenue this afternoon and indicated that they don't know yet, is what I was told. The Department of Revenue has filed special legislation to reserve these funds in a special account, because the town of Northborough, like all the municipalities, has to use this money for opioid prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery programs, all of which is sort of spelled out in the settlement. So because it's a settlement, it's not a grant, which means it doesn't come to the Board of Selectmen. It's considered a general revenue. However, if we take it in as a general revenue, we have these reporting obligations that will be coming. So that, again, the Department of Revenue is working with Administration and Finance for some special legislation that will round out how the money is to be used, how it's to be appropriated, how it's to be accounted for, and how we are to report back so that we can ensure that we're in compliance. None of that is before you this evening. The only thing that's before you this evening is for you to sign off on the Massachusetts State Subdivision Agreement for statewide opioid settlements. So this is the agreement that all municipalities in Massachusetts that are participating, have chosen to participate in this, have either signed off on or will be required to sign off. So there's no more negotiation. There's no more discussion regarding the split. Everybody has basically signed off and agreed on that. And so again, the only thing left after us completing this and submitting it back to the Attorney General's office is, and we want to do this now because the first payment is coming, again, it's in talking to the AG's office. It could be in a month, it could be 3 months. It has to do with some of the final details of how it's going to be paid out. But the first settlement is supposed to be somewhat front loaded. It'll be a little larger than the settlements that are the payments that will be in the out years. So we want to make sure that we are in the system and able to receive that initial settlement payment. Again, what we'll do is working with the finance director, we're going to set up an account. We're going to set that money aside, waiting for the final rules and regulations and guidance from the Department of Revenue and Administration and Finance. So again, everybody's asking the same questions. So that's what we're waiting on for details. But in terms of this evening, I would recommend the board execute the agreement as proposed by the Attorney General. They're very anxious to get this wrapped up because they want to start working on the initial distribution of the settlement. So that's what we have. There's a good article on the Mass Municipal Association's website just talking about the process. But the payments will go from 2023, which is the current fiscal year, to 2038. So, so it's a rather substantial duration, and will amount to, you know, some substantial money for us. Again, on an average basis, the numbers I've seen are low 30,000 is what we'll be looking at on an annual basis, with hopefully a little bit of a bonus in year one. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. At this point, we're just looking for you to authorize me to execute the agreement and get it back in, so we don't miss out on that initial payment.
Great. Leslie, question?
John, why would a community not sign off on this?
Well, at this point in time, there is no reason. It's a done deal. You know, when it comes to a settlement, once the majority of the participants have signed off on it, then that is the settlement. So the numbers aren't going to get any better. The percentage split with the Attorney General's office isn't going to get any better. This has been something we've been fighting pretty hard about for almost the last year. And working with council and working with other communities, we basically rejected the Attorney General's initial proposal of a 15% share. We didn't think that was reasonable or equitable or made sense based on level of effort to get the settlement in the first place. So that 60-40 split, as I said, is being proposed now is pretty much it. The other piece that we got working through the MMA was this group. It's not just what we're getting. This is money we're getting directly, comes straight to the town of Northborough to be spent in accordance with whatever the rules and regulations are that get promulgated. But the other 60% will still be used for the same purposes, you know, to prevention, harm reduction, treatment, recovery programs. And the municipalities will have at least a 50% voice at the table for how those funds would be used. So I would anticipate, and certainly the MMA envisions, that there will be additional funds that municipalities will be able to apply for through the state recovery fund that they've set up for the other 60%. So there'll be additional resources that we can hopefully access through either grants or some other distribution to be determined. So this was a good settlement. And at the end of the day, I think the appropriate level and amount of resources are going to make their way to the municipalities who have been directly impacted by the opioid crisis. And so this is, as I said, it's been a long haul to get here, but I would recommend that the board sign this. If you don't sign it, there's only downside at this point. If you don't sign it, then you will miss out on the initial distribution payments. And like I said, they're going to be front loaded because one of the companies wants to get their settlement payout done faster than the other. So it might be somewhat front loaded. So that's why the final figures are still being worked out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Any other questions? This is very much a formality in terms of board action, but Julianne, yes, if you have something.
So we sign off on this and the ruling comes down about how it can be used. What will we be the committee that decides on the best use, or will it be Board of Health or the police department or the school department?
Yeah, that's the question. So it'll come through as it won't come in as a grant. If it came in as a grant, then it would be the Board of Selectmen that decides. I did confirm with Department of Revenue today. It is considered a general revenue. However, it's a general revenue with a whole lot of strings and reporting constraints attached to it, which is why the Department of Revenue and Administration of Finance is proposing some special legislation to give some guidance around how it should be segregated and how it shall be used. So some of that detail remains to be fleshed out at this point.
Okay.
I would imagine that however it's used, it will wind up being brought through and appropriated through town meeting, just as any other revenue would be, unless they set up the ability for a special revenue fund, in which case then it would be segregated. And if they develop rules and regulations around how it's accessed and used, specifically for these purposes, that remains to be seen. So the good news is the money's coming. The bad news is I can't tell you how it's going to work or how we're going to use it at this point, because we're waiting for further guidance from the state.
Anything more, members of the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to approve the Massachusetts State Subdivision Agreement for statewide opioid settlements as presented and authorize the town administrator to execute same.
Second.
Moved by Julianne Hirsch, seconded by Scott Rogers. This is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Aye.
and I, Jason Perot, vote aye.
Excellent. Thank you.
John, that requires signatures or?
Well, that's why I had, it's really only one signature spot. That's why, and for wanting to get it back, they're pretty hot to get these back. So you authorize me to sign it. Your vote takes care of that. So I'll just sign it and return it to the Attorney General's office tomorrow.
Very good.
That if I can get it into them by tomorrow, then there's absolutely no question that we will be in the first disbursement whenever that happens in the next couple of months.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, discussion regarding the April 14 ARPA public input session. So just to preface this discussion a bit, back at our last Board of Selectmen meeting, partly in response to public input, partly in response to the public input session that was held by members of the community, the Board of Selectmen decided that we wanted to hold a meeting, joint board meeting, to bring together some of the board members and set aside a separate time to hold that meeting, to take some public input and try to move forward on this particular issue with the sequence of events, I guess, over the last couple of weeks and the sequence of events upcoming. It seems that we had some feedback that there hasn't been adequate public notice for all members of the public or all constituencies or potential constituencies to be warned about this meeting. And so from that perspective, I would like to propose to the board that we cancel this meeting scheduled for this week with the expectation of holding a meeting at a future date when some of the other things that are going on at the moment are settled down and both the board and staff can focus more directly on that particular issue. I did note this week there were concerns expressed about Christian holidays taking place through the end of this week. Next week is school vacation week. I don't know what we can expect for families to be present or not when the kids are off. The week after that is town meeting, and we have more than enough to do to prepare for that without this other significant issue. So from that perspective, I don't have a date to suggest other than some point after town meeting, when we're past all of the work that's currently on our plates and we can focus more specifically on that particular issue. That's my proposal. I'd invite comments from the board about what they want to do for this currently scheduled April 14th meeting, which, being a joint board meeting, needs to be posted and as of yet has not posted. So any comments or input? Kristen?
I have to say, I agree with you about that. It's not only it's Holy Thursday for Catholics. I don't know what it is for other religions, but that's, and Good Friday is the next day. But my son pointed out it's also the first night of vacation, Mom. So because they don't have school on Friday and then they have the whole next week off. So a lot of people would probably be, if they're not leaving that night, I was thinking they're still not really in the mindset to talk about something really serious that everybody really has a lot of wants to pay a lot of attention to. So I think that's a fair idea, as long as we can, figure out when to schedule it in after town meeting. But I realize this is
Right,
my first year on the board preparing for town meeting. But at my orientation a while back, John did tell me that the month before town meeting is
Yes.
really, really, really busy for him. And so I agree that it's like a crazy time to try and squeeze this in.
I would anticipate that the first selectman meeting following town meeting would be a discussion about exactly when to schedule the specific discussion.
Do we have to I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. Can I just ask another question?
No, go. Yes, Kristen. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Do we have to have a public meeting to schedule that meeting? I mean, maybe the answer is yes, but we do.
Well, I think it's by the agreement of the board and in coordination to some extent with the other boards and committees, such as the school committee, some of the finance committees, some of the staff members who may have relevant input to provide as well, in addition to the logistic details of where the meeting's held. Is it going to support remote access so that people who can't be physically present are able to participate or offer their input, those kinds of considerations. So there are, I mean, it's of broad concern in the community and is going to take some amount of planning, I think, to kind of get it right to everybody's satisfaction. So
Okay.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
I think so.
Leslie?
I agree with you. Yeah, I think that because of kind of not sufficient notice at this point, and wanting it to be something that everybody feels welcome to attend and they feel like they've had enough time to think about it, talk to their friends and neighbors and try and get people there, and also to have the hybrid set up. So I agree.
Okay, Leslie, thank you. Scott Rogers.
Yeah, same here. Given time, let's preserve the idea of a hybrid meeting. If that continues to be the high school library or associated venue like that, make it so that it's as accessible as possible and give folks some further notice. I would have a question. I'm getting a lot of inquiries from folks with ideas. I've been routing them to the Be Well input form. I just wanted to know if that's continues to be appropriate. And John, in terms of department staff receiving those ideas, is that a good channel while folks wait for this other meeting?
Yeah, that's a good channel, because the group is meeting on a regular basis to go through those and to sort through them, and so that's fine to do it that way.
Great. Okay, great. So I want to just get that out to folks that are watching, is continue to use that input form to capture the ideas in a consistent and collective manner. That's actually better than the emails into the Board of Selectmen, in that it gets directly to department staff, and then it can be categorized and worked by that staff group.
Thank you, Scott. Julianne?
Oh, I definitely agree that we have to postpone, but we've all been receiving emails from a company like Capital Strategic Solutions, which has been helping other towns draft public input sessions and surveys. And I would really like to make sure that at our next meeting, we discuss at least hearing from a representative from one of those types of consulting groups. Because if we decide to do a survey like many towns did, it has to be a good survey. And if it's going to be a public input session, we all know it has to be well run, and so that people feel comfortable. And so I would really like to hear from one of those consulting groups how they feel they could help us. And I'm happy to reach out to Capital Strategic Solutions to see how we start that conversation. Would you like me to do that?
No, if you're gonna hire,
That would be, yeah, I was going to say.
if you're
Jonathan,
going to
go
be
ahead.
bringing consultants, there's a legal process that you have to follow for bringing in consultants. Starts with drafting a scope of services, determining what you want, then bringing them in. As far as bringing them in and interviewing them, you would have to follow that process. So you'd have to be very careful not to be reaching out or giving any particular company what would be perceived as a inside track or a favorable line in. So, but we can talk.
Okay.
Thank you, Julianne. Kristen?
I just wanted to add one more thing, sort of replying to Scott, that I haven't really been online much, and I heard through the grapevine that he was sending people to the Be Well Northborough thing, and that's fine if your ideas are Be Well Northborough ideas, but I think if they're $1 million ideas and you really want to share them with the whole board, like I'm not going to see those Be Well Northborough ideas. And so I think like if people have ideas like, I really think we need mental health, we need to spend some of the ARPA money on that, or we need to spend it on economic development. I think that's the kind of thing that they should still send in emails to the form online.
I think we all need to be prepared to receive emails anyway, regardless of where the guidance is placed. And I apologize to the public if I have not been responsive over the last week and a half. As I mentioned, I had some various other things I was dealing with, and I'm catching up now. So if something was sent to me and I didn't respond, I apologize. And so to your point, Kristen, yes, I think it's inevitable that we're going to receive some amount of emails anyway. Be Well Northborough can be one point of contact that people can have in mind if they're trying to send something. That's fine. I think in the end, all the information is going to wind up being collected and consolidated and sorted and sifted and classified so that we kind of identify all the major themes that people are commenting on, and then we can take a next step to figure out what makes sense to do given resources, but limited resources, and probably more projects and more greater expense than we're going to have available to do everything that everyone might suggest. Julianne?
Well, in line with the communication, I think it's really important that if people have strong feelings about, or any kind of opinion about how they'd like to see this meeting run, I would love to get emails about that, so that when we do come to our next meeting to discuss how we're going to do the ARPA input session, we have some feedback from the residents. So just want to encourage people, especially in terms of how we're going to set up the meeting and what they'd like to see and how much public participation they'd like to see. I'd like to get some emails on that if people would like to do that.
Okay, thank you, Julianne. And yes, Scott Rogers.
Yeah, I just recalled something from you wouldn't have expected it, but it was the Appropriations Committee meeting, their last one. In terms of, you wouldn't expect uplifting moments from an Appropriations Committee meeting, but since it was the presentation of the library, the health department, and the senior center budgets, if you want to get, I would encourage the public to go back and watch this, but to get the rundown of the existing programs and the planned programs coming out of the senior center and wellness out of the Department of Health, and then the library programs, a lot of great information in what would have been an otherwise boring budget meeting, but very good plans in place. And you'll see some of the themes that those departments are already working on in terms of health and wellness and meeting, working towards real community needs and taking some of the input that's already coming forward from folks. So just made me recall that meeting was a very positive event. And it's worth watching just to hear all the stuff that's coming out of just those three departments. And so I think that leads into the structure that we talked about for this upcoming meeting. Having those departments represented, I think will be important for the public to hear from those ladies directly on what the plans are in those different departments.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Anything more, members? Okay. Thank you very much. So by agreement, no meeting this Thursday, meeting to be scheduled at a future date and to be discussed at the next meeting of the Board of Selectmen following annual town meeting. Does that sound right? Okay. Thank you all very much. Appreciate that. Next item is the reinstatement of common victualler license for Miller Farms at 277 Main Street. John, would you care to catch us up here?
Yeah, so basically this is the ice cream shop down in the near Bartlett Street. So they closed and they're a seasonal business to begin with, so they're looking to open. They do need a common vic license because they have seating, but it's just a couple of picnic tables. There's no inside seating. So at this point, I didn't ask him to come in for the meeting. It's a pretty straightforward reinstatement of his common vic license for the picnic seating. And hopefully the board will approve that because he's looking to open up right away.
Okay, thank you, John. In our packet, the notice indicates that we have received satisfactory inspections from building, fire, and health departments. So there's no issue in that regard or nothing pending in that regard. That's already been completed. Any comments or questions from the board? Kristen?
I'd just like to say I would like my ice cream fix, so I definitely would like to see this pass.
Very good. Leslie?
Yeah, I was glad to see that he's applying for this. I was a little sad that he might not reopen again this year. So it's a nice spot. It's a nice location. So I'm glad to see that that's reopened. Yeah.
Okay, very good. If there's nothing further, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to reinstate the common victualler license for Miller Farms at 277 Main Street for the 2022 calendar year.
Second.
Moved by Kristen Wickstead, seconded by Scott Rogers. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead.
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch.
Aye.
Scott Rogers.
Aye.
Leslie Rutan.
Aye.
And I, Jason Perot, vote aye. Passes unanimously. Next up is reappointments to boards, committees, and commissions. Maybe it's easier to begin with the list of appointees list of existing committee members who have indicated they would like to be reappointed and for which there are no other applicants. We have a lengthy list here. Let me just take a look through. Reappointments, Board of Selectmen. So I'm just going to quickly read through this. Council on Aging, Jarl Anderson and Virginia Sims George. Community Affairs Committee, Suzanne Sizlika, Rebecca Foley-Malopoulos, and Lisa Smith. Community Preservation Committee, Peter Martin. Conservation Commission, Todd Helwig and Dan Clark. Earthwork Board, Thomas Beals. Elderly and Disabled Taxation Fund Committee, Muriel Swenner. Historic District Commission, Bruce Shute, Millie Milton, Lorna Helms as an alternate. Open Space Committee, Paul Tagliaferri and Brian Belfer. Parks and Recreation Commission, Sean Durkin and Faith Stevens. Scholarship Committee, Elizabeth Nolan. Board of Trustees of Special Benevolent Funds, Marcia Roman. And Youth Commission, Gila Schneider Nahum and Casey Rickley. Any questions from the board members? Yes, Kristen.
Were there other names before those names? Are you sure you read them all?
There are, but those are not appointed by the Board of Selectmen. They were just added for completeness. Yep.
All right, all right. I was just scanning through just now. Okay, no problem.
Right. And so, yes, if there are no other questions on this list, do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to reappoint those individuals who appear on the 2022 reappointment list to the corresponding boards, committees, and commissions.
Second.
Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded by Leslie Rattan. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Aye.
and I, Jason Pro, vote aye. That carries unanimously. We thank all of the people currently serving and seeking to continue to serve. We appreciate your service on your respective committees. Next up, we have the reappointment, or I should say appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals. For that position, we had the incumbent, Richard Rand, and we also had an applicant, Kevin Wersch, who appeared before the Selectmen Interview Subcommittee. Due to her association with a member of the ZBA, Leslie Rattan stepped aside from the interview committee, and I stood in for that. So that interview was conducted by Scott Rogers and I. And I just want to find it in my packet here. Here we are. And included in the packet is the draft meeting minutes of that interview. Yet to be approved, but reviewed by Scott and I individually for feedback to Diane. And so I guess for purposes of discussion, do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move the board vote to reappoint Richard Rand to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term as recommended by the interview subcommittee.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded by Leslie Rattan. And any further discussion? Julianne.
So I watched the interview, and I have to say that Kevin Wersch seemed to offer an experience that the board currently doesn't really have. He's an architect, and I'm quoting from the information in our packet, who has experience with site planning, building design, knowledge of various codes, and experience reviewing local zoning bylaws. So I think his learning curve is going to be pretty short. And looking at the makeup of the board, I think his architectural background would be a unique and valuable addition. In addition, I think it's really important that we encourage people to volunteer where they really feel comfortable, as Kevin is, and where they feel they can make their best contributions. So, it's always difficult when you have two great candidates, and I understand where the subcommittee is coming from with the decades of experience that Mr. Rand has. But I think that Kevin has a different kind of experience, which is extremely valuable.
Thank you, Julianne. Kristen?
Yeah, so my take on it was that the two of them both have experience, and what Mr. Rand has is the perspective of 23 years on this one board in this one town. And what Mr. Wersch has is from being in front of ZBAs in other places with his job. He has a perspective of other places, and I think that's also a valuable thing, coming from a background where I was a speech therapist and I used to work in IEP meetings. So when I was the therapist, I was on one side of the table and I had a certain experience. And when I was the aunt of my nephew as a significant disability, I go to these meetings with my sister, and it's a very different experience being on the other side of the table. And it's nice to have the perspective of both, to do both jobs. And I think it would be a very valuable perspective to have someone on the board who's also been on the other side of this. And actually, and sounds like he does it fairly regularly, representing developers or clients or whatever, and bringing also maybe some information about how other towns are handling certain types of variances for whatever reason, environmental, or I don't really know that much about this. Don't pick me for this board ever. But it would be possibly something else that could be valuable to see how other towns are handling various kinds of decisions. And he would have that knowledge, whereas Mr. Rand would not.
Thank you, Kristen. Scott Rogers.
Yeah, so in reviewing both applicants, that was great. You saw great.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Scott. Leslie, perhaps you should mute your video and audio as you're not participating in this portion. That's I am remiss.
Video and audio.
Leslie was kind of recusing herself from participation in this proceeding, so have her step aside in the virtual meeting, and we can continue the conversation. Sorry for the interruption, Scott. Could you please continue?
Yeah, no worries. So one thing we do like to see, in candidates is their ability to prepare, and to the extent that they can. There might not have been a time in Mr. Wersch's case in terms of, for the Zoning Board of Appeals, getting that familiarity with that particular board in terms of talking with town staff or existing members, or reading, getting an understanding of Northborough specific bylaws. So that's something that we do like to see in candidates coming before a board, is the amount of preparation they've undergone to get the specifics of that board and committee. It could have been that he just didn't have time to do those items. Great candidate. Hope he, and we said it in the meeting, comes forward again, because got a lot of great qualifications, and we'd love to see him, operate within town. But in this, at this moment in time, that's what tipped the scales for me towards Mr. Rand.
Thank you, Scott. I can add my comments. So to your point, Kristen, talking about his experience, he certainly does have the professional qualifications and the experience of having been in front of ZBAs in the past, or I think perhaps it's, not necessarily so frequently ZBAs necessarily. So certainly some portion of that is ZBA work, but also planning boards just for the projects that he's been undertaking. And doing so as a representative of a project, making a request to a ZBA, not as a sitting member of a ZBA making decisions about various applications that comes before him. So I think he certainly would have the perspective of someone doing, as he described to us, a lot of healthcare or educational facilities, but perhaps not so much for some of the residential issues that come before the ZBA. It's a different aspect of the bylaws, and not necessarily, in my opinion, something that he would have had a lot of direct experience with, despite his qualifications. As a member of The ZBA, I think we do have 2 alternate seats, and it is the case that one of those alternates, neither of those alternate seats was up for reappointment this year. And it's my preference. I like to see, for this board in particular, because it has the alternate seat, someone who enters as a new member do so in an alternate capacity so that they can kind of come up to speed on the board, come up to speed on the details of our own bylaws. And they get the opportunity to fully engage in the inquiry process when the application is presented. They're just not voting members at that point. But it's a valuable progression to be able to come in that capacity, determine to some extent how great their interest actually is and their ability to commit to it before being seated in a regular seat as a voting member of the board. I would note that Mr. Rand, yes, he has a long record of service. He also has an exemplary record of attendance and presence in ZBA meetings, frequently recognized by his peers on that board to assume the chairmanship and to lead the proceedings. The experience of having viewed many applications in the town of Northborough under the consideration of Northborough's bylaws and being able to make those decisions. In contrast, Mr. Wersch, I don't say this to be critical of Mr. Wersch. I say it just as a contrast or something that I consider when I think about some of these appointments. I am interested in seeing somebody demonstrate some level of engagement in town government. I like to see people who take the time to vote in the annual town election. I like to see people who, maybe not every single session of every single year, but manage to get to town meeting and see what's going on there and have some understanding of that. In Mr. Wersch's description, and I thank him for being very, very candid about this. He indicated that he basically hasn't ever attended town meeting despite 14 years being in the town, hasn't voted in a town election, has not attended a meeting of our ZBA. So I'm at a loss to reach the point of deciding that somebody with those professional qualifications, but that lack of prior engagement in the town deserves to be seated in place of the incumbent as a voting member on this committee. I would certainly encourage him to reapply when alternate position comes around, to be considered for that. I think with his professional qualifications and with some experience in an alternate seat, he certainly could be a very valuable and contributing member to the ZBA. But I don't see him as being a compelling candidate to take the place of a long-serving, experienced, and well-regarded incumbent. Julianne.
So a couple of things. Scott, you mentioned that you would have liked to have seen Mr. Wersch reach out to staff and educate himself a little bit about the zoning board. I hope I'm not speaking for Mr. Wersch, but I know that many people are very mindful of how busy our staff is, particularly as we have been going through COVID and coming out of COVID. So that's something that is maybe we should let people know if staff is willing to sit down with people, and that, you know, people are not taking up too much of their time, because if it were me, I would feel hesitant to take up a staff member's time. Secondly, yes, Mr. Wersch did not attend zoning meetings, but he did say that he had reviewed minutes and some documentation about the zoning board meetings. I believe he said that. And thirdly, the emphasis that the subcommittee puts on town meeting. I do have to say that town meeting is one meeting in 1 year. And people might have an anniversary or a child's birthday or something like that around that time. That just doesn't make that particular date good for them. It's not like they have a lot of opportunity to, to go to town meeting. So I do, I feel that with his architectural background, his experience with other boards, I'm still convinced that Kevin Wersch is the right candidate for zoning board.
Okay, I think it's probably the case, Julianne, that in any one particular year, yes, someone might have a conflict and not be able to get to town meeting. I don't think that conflict presents itself for just regular annual town elections. And I think over a span of 14 years as a resident in town, it's hard for me to believe that somebody had not been to a single day or single evening of town meeting over that span. If I find it more likely to be, to some extent, the lack of interest as opposed to perpetual conflicts year in, year out that prevent someone from doing that.
Yeah, Jason, I think you mentioned just overall level of engagement, and without picking any one particular event, any of those dimensions, filling, would have helped demonstrate engagement. And for this, well, for many boards, we want to see a level of engagement, and to go along with the decision to then step up and wish to be appointed or apply to be appointed to a board or committee. Not all of us can do homework ahead of time, but we certainly prefer to see the homework ahead of time. Not to belittle the preparation, but a level of engagement and preparation.
And let me add, I'm not imposing a requirement on somebody that I didn't impose on myself. When I moved to town, this is back in '96, from that point forward through 2004, I was voting in town elections. I was attending town meeting. In 2004, I was appointed to the Financial Planning Committee, and then, of course, as a member of that committee and a member of the Board of Selectmen subsequently, they're obviously very engaged. But I considered that prior portion, before I went to the Financial Planning Committee, as having been part of my education process in understanding the town and understanding how it works, and then having some credibility to be able to step onto a significant board or committee in this town and be a contributing member to that. So it is, to me, a fairly significant differentiator, particularly, and I keep saying this, I say it every time we have one of these discussions. There are a lot of boards and committees that don't require too much more other than time, energy, and interest. And if you have those three things, you can join those committees. We have vacancies, and help get some of that work done. When it comes to some of the more centrally focused committees for finance or for zoning and planning, then I think there is a higher threshold. And while Mr. Wersch certainly has professional qualifications that are appropriate, I can't agree that the lack of engagement through these 14 years as a member of the town is something to be overlooked in this discussion. Yes, Kristen.
So your description of yourself is one way, very admirable way of getting involved in town. Another way is to do it the way I did it and not pay attention to town politics at all, and not even know who John Coderre was for a long time, until a friend conned me into going to town meeting because it was a fun thing to do with a group of women. and my husband could stay home with the kids. Like, there are many different ways to get involved in town politics. And here I am on the Board of Selectmen after a year of paying very close attention to lots of things, true. But it was really just 1 year. And before that, I voted and I went to town meeting. I didn't go to town meeting the entire time I lived here. But I think it's important to remember that a lot of people may be very engaged with the community, but they may not be engaged in the political or the municipal side of the community. So I volunteered in the Peasley School Library for 12 years in a row. I was like a gold star mom there as far as, help, as far as the librarian was concerned. I was her number one volunteer. I would always drop everything and go in whenever she needed help. I volunteered in the music association at the high school when my daughter was involved in music there. So I felt like I was very involved in my community. I just wasn't involved in any boards and committees. So that may be the case with him, and I don't think it should exclude him from stepping up and volunteering for a committee. And I think you both acknowledge that you're glad he did apply. So I think it's great when people apply, and I don't think people should be scared away by this conversation that, oh, well, I didn't go to town meeting the last couple of years, and I was going to volunteer for the cultural council, and now I really probably shouldn't do it. Like, please don't take it that way. And I see what you mean. Like, the ZBA is very important, and it's a like kind of a niche committee. But I just wanted to throw that out there. There are lots of ways to be engaged in the community.
I totally agree. And I agree that the requirements that each of us might individually have in mind might differ depending on what the committee is and who the person is and what the qualifications are. I'll say it again and again and again. I like Mr. Wersch's professional qualifications. I don't think those qualifications alone entitle him to a seat on the ZBA without having had much direct prior involvement in town government in any fashion, including even attending any of our own ZBA meetings, which potentially would be something that is, strikes his interest. I do like to see some of that interest demonstrated before someone's applying for a seat on a major board or committee. And I'm not seeing that here. And I'm certainly not seeing something compelling that would cause me to choose that applicant over a long-serving incumbent with tremendous amount of experience, who has served as the chairman many times on this board, and who, by his long track record, he's going to be there for every meeting. He's going to be there for every case without fail, because he's demonstrated that he does that. We certainly have applicants who wind up on boards or committees, and then for whatever reason, and sometimes through no fault of their own, they're going to miss a meeting here. They're going to be late for a meeting there. And it's, the requirement or the engagement turns out not to be something that they can adequately do. And so again, I'm not of a mind to test drive a new applicant in that capacity when we have an incumbent who's already demonstrated time and time again that he can fulfill that responsibility. For this committee, in my mind, the correct path for new applicants is to first serve in an alternate capacity, develop some of the experience, develop some of the familiarity with the bylaws, and demonstrate that they're actually going to show up and do the work before they advance into a regular voting seat. That's a distinct difference with this one particular committee. It provides that path through some of the alternate seats. This time next year, when one of those alternate seats rolls around, I would invite Mr. Wersch to reapply and be considered for it. But where we're talking about a voting seat this year, sorry, I don't see it. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I would like to invite Kristen and Julianne, if you will, to please explain to me why you find the new applicant's presentation to be so compelling that it justifies replacing the incumbent in a voting position.
I'll go first. And I'm sorry if I wasn't clear with my first statements about why I feel Mr. Wersch is the more deserving candidate. And not even deserving is the wrong word. The better candidate at this time for the zoning board. It's his professional experience, it's his educational experience, it's his professional background has allowed him to work with probably many other zoning boards, see some different ideas, different ways of doing things, which I feel is always a valuable thing. And I guess it's going to come down to whether I feel that a person has to go through a certain route to get to apply or to get a seat on a board that they feel that they would best contribute to, and do the things that you've outlined, or whether I feel that what he brings to the table in terms of his work experience and his education is more valuable than that. And in this case, that's how I feel.
Kristen?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Julianne said is a lot of what I've already said. I think I made it clear already. And I also worry a little that people might feel that they shouldn't bother applying for these things if it's never even discussed. So I think regardless of what happens this evening, like the fact that we've had a really good discussion about it and we all have really good points to make, shows a promising sort of point of view of the board and the town and how things should be working. I think we're actually doing a really good job here.
Okay.
Yeah, one more comment, Jason.
Scott, sure.
Yeah, I think, not to discourage, any applicants, but I think, one way to oversimplify this situation is if you're interested in a particular board or committee, go to one of their meetings. And that's probably the simplest way I can, get you onto the path that you know what you're getting into, and the boards and committees, know who the potential applicants are. And that's probably the number one thing that anybody can do. 17 vacancies right now, as I count them. Go to, even if there's not a vacancy, go to one of the committees that you're interested in and see if you would be able to perform in the duties of that board, committee, or commission. But we're looking for engagement, or I'm looking for engagement.
I mean, if you want to discount town election or annual town meeting, then you could still consider what has the applicant's engagement been with the very board or committee he's seeking to join. And the answer is almost none in 14 years in the town. It's only having submitted an application that Mr. Wersch, as he described, and I don't say this to be critical, it's just the fact of the engagement. In preparation, he had looked at some of the online agenda and minutes and decisions that had been rendered recently by the ZBA. He had not spoken with any ZBA members. He had not spoken with any town staff members who are associated with zoning and planning. You're not bothered by that, Julianne?
It's how you prioritize these requirements. And I'm still convinced that his professional background and he's been an architect, I think, for 14 years, has interfaced with a lot of zoning boards, knows codes and bylaws. It's, you know, that's more important to me. I think having that kind of broad exposure would be a great addition to the zoning board. So, and you know, is this conversation that you're trying, you know, well, I guess, yeah, we're all trying to convince each other that our opinion is correct, right?
Well, they're opinions, so by definition, they're not necessarily correct, right? They're just opinions. Kristen, you were not at all concerned about the applicant's lack of contact or engagement or any indication of prior interest in the ZBA until choosing to apply to serve on it.
Yeah, so I mean, if you do the job for a certain number of years, he probably felt like going through minutes was enough. He probably felt like, and maybe it was a rushed situation too. Like I don't know him at all, but I also feel like architects are good problem solvers, and it's good to have them around. My brother-in-law is an architect, and he's great to have in almost any conversation about any kind of if there's a bit of a dilemma in it. Anyway, but the I mean, I can see that it was a mistake for him to not watch any meetings, because it would have been really important to the two of you, but there was not, it's not like there were instructions that he was supposed to follow. Like, he was just supposed to know that he should watch a meeting. And I'm actually going to write that in my notes on my Facebook page about, if you want to apply for a board or committee, go to the committee, go attend a meeting that you're applying for, the committee you're applying for. That's really good advice. But I guess what we're missing here, if we could backpedal a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, is having that instructions listed somewhere so they would know that that's a really important, that's going to be the deal breaker for you if you don't go to one of these meetings. But I mean, and he's a guy, right? You guys are guys. I think it might be a little more likely that a woman might take that extra step, be a little more cautious, try to make sure they were crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. I know a lot of men in my world kind of feel like, I know this job, I do this job, I don't need to attend any meetings. I'm just gonna apply for the committee in my town because I know I could be helpful. And they have a certain level of confidence that is not a bad thing, but maybe that was part of it. Like, I already know, and it's, it's not like it was in a rule that he broke or something, it was sort of an unknown.
Excuse
I mean,
me.
it's common sense, but it wasn't, it's not like he really should have known, in my opinion. I think he might have just thought I could
I
do
got to
that.
make a comment.
Scott, yes.
I am completely perplexed why you are bringing gender stereotypes into this conversation. That is so inappropriate.
Okay, well,
talking-
sorry if I'm insulting you, Scott.
I'm really confused about that statement right there.
Well, a lot of the men I know who are professional men who are either architects, lawyers, doctors, anyone in a professional field, they wouldn't think twice about not watching a meeting and thinking that they could do the job because they understand the material, because it's what they do for a job, and they are sometimes on the other side of that table. If there was some kind of board or committee where you needed a speech pathologist, I might have done that same thing because it was my job and I knew exactly how those meetings go, and I don't really need to do that kind of homework. If Kristen Wickstead was applying for the ZBA, should she watch a million meetings? Absolutely. So I think it depends on the experience of the person. I think he probably felt, I don't know him. I'm speaking for him. I should stop guessing these things. But.
Again, there's several aspects of engagement, and as a resident of the town for 14 years, I am surprised that there has not been a prior instance of some particular issue going before the planning board or the ZBA that might have caught the applicant's interest and kind of, attended a meeting to see what was going on with that. There hasn't been a particular zoning bylaw article on a town meeting warrant that's ever caught the interest and prompted somebody to attend one night of town meeting over a span of 14 years. I'm not talking about someone who's, applied to serve on a committee and then after the fact sits in on a meeting just to be sure that they understand what's going on. I'm talking about, have you never been interested in what your own committee is doing, the one you're applying to? Up to that point, it's never been a concern or of interest, not a single matter that's ever been before that board over 14 years. And I would just say that I would say that surprises me. And I, again, would reemphasize that if we're talking about an alternate slot on the board, given the qualifications and everything, I think that would certainly be a suitable venue, again, for the applicant to test drive the meeting and for the circumstances to kind of test drive the applicant, whether they're able to meet all the meeting, the scheduled meetings, how prepared they seem to be, how engaged they are in performing, in doing that, and the rationale that they demonstrate when they talk about some of the applications that come before them. There's every reason to think the professional qualifications will bear out, but there isn't anything to indicate any kind of prior interest or engagement in any respect. Not for town elections, not for town meetings, not even for the ZBA itself or the planning board, apparently. So given that lack of engagement, I cannot, in good conscience, choose to replace a long-serving, dedicated incumbent with a new applicant whose only argument is the professional qualifications on their resume. Julianne.
I think we're all going round and round here and kind of repeating our opinions. I move that we proceed to a vote.
Okay, it's well, let me re-ask for the motion to be presented. Because I believe it was seconded by Leslie, and she's actually recused from the proceeding, so we would need to re-present that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to reappoint Richard Rand to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term as recommended by the interview subcommittee.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Julianne. Moved by Scott Rogers, seconded by Julianne Hirsch. I don't think any further discussion is needed. Roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead,
No.
Julianne Hirsch,
No.
Scott Rogers,
Yes.
Jason Perot is a yes. We have a split vote, and I don't know that we're going to make any further progress this evening. So for the moment, it stands, there is no appointment to this seat for the ZBA when the term expires, and we will have to revisit the situation. And so concludes that agenda item. Can we bring Leslie Rattan back in? Hello, Leslie. The next item on the agenda is assignment of town meeting warrant articles. So you have a copy of the town meeting warrant articles. This is just the kind of the Excel spreadsheet version here. John, do you have anything you'd like to preface this with?
Sure. So in your packet is a summary of the warrant articles. It shows the purpose of the article, the motion, the presenter, and the recommendation. It's color coded for you. So this is the board's warrant. And traditionally, certain folks will make motions, like the chair of the Community Preservation Committee generally makes his own motions and does his presentation. Same for the planning board. What I've included for you here in green are all of the warrant articles that traditionally would be made by the Board of Selectmen. So this is just not presenting, but just making the motion at town meeting. In yellow are the 4 budget articles that the Board of Selectmen historically takes a vote to recommend to town meeting. So 2 things. The first thing is just assignment of articles, determining who's going to make the motion at town meeting. And then secondary to that would be the board taking actual vote to recommend approval of Article 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's the town budget, the enterprise, the K-8 schools, and the Algonquin Regional High School.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And as you'll note, Articles 1, 2, 3, and 9 indicate that they might be incorporated into a consent agenda. Do we have any further information about the likelihood of that?
Yes, the moderator's indicated his intention to use a consent agenda. As you recall, the last 2 town meetings, we did this, and just as a way to kind of condense and streamline town meeting to just move it along a little bit faster. So those articles will be part of the consent agenda.
Okay, very good. So as I count through, there's a total of 19 articles, of which 4 are likely consent agenda items, which brings us down to a number 15 certain, if that makes sense.
Yep.
What I would propose, I guess, just to try to simplify this, is for me to take those first 7 articles, which includes the 4 consent agenda ones, yes. If they end up on the consent agenda, then we don't have to do anything. If any one of them is called out, then I'll just field it. But fundamentally, that would leave me with making the motions for numbers 4 and 5, town budget and water sewer enterprise, And number 10, Appropriations Committee Reserve. There's no objection to that. The consent agenda ones will just take care of themselves. Does that seem fine to everybody? Any concern? And so then beginning with Article 11 through 22, which I believe is 12 articles and 4 of you remaining. Would everyone like 3 articles?
Sure.
Leslie, do you have 3?
I'll do number 12. You asking us for the specific numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm fine with any of them, really. 12, 19. 21.
12, 19, 21. Okay, Scott?
Any are fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine with any, so I'll pass and let the other members take their pick.
Okay, Julianne?
All right, well, to make it easy, I'll do 11, which is police cruiser replacements. Right?
Yeah.
13.
Yeah.
And 14.
All right, thank you. Kristen?
I didn't know that this was going to happen, so this is fun.
It's
easier for you to just put me and Scott wherever, that's fine. I don't mind either.
Okay, I'm gonna just put you in the next 3 sequential then, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that'll be 15, 16, and 17.
2 dump trucks and a loader. Yay.
This is the fun we have at town meeting with the capital items. Yes.
Yes. Excellent.
So Scott, that would put you in 18, backhoe replacement, 20, sewer inflow and infiltration and mitigation, and 22, consolidated personnel bylaw.
Great.
Is that fine for everybody?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just pop those in. Thank you. And next up
Chairman?
is, yes, John.
If I may, just for your knowledge, so financial planning has completed all of their work, and their report is actually in the warrant document, which has been posted as of today. Appropriations completed all of their work on Thursday, and they have unanimously recommended approval of all of the capital articles as well as the operating budgets. So the 2 committees leading up to your process tonight have unanimously voted to recommend approval of all these articles. So the process, as I believe Scott Rogers had spoken to earlier, is complete. Historically, the Board of Selectmen has taken the position of voting in favor of the operating budgets. I think in a effort to emphasize the working relationship with all of the departments based on the trend monitoring and the forecast projections back in December, that everybody's worked well together to bring in budgets in line with what we have identified as being the resources available to the community. And in that sort of vein, to show the board's support for these articles. And that's why articles 4, 5, 6, and 7 are the ones that traditionally the Board of Selectmen votes to recommend at town meeting. That means for our new members, that means that when after the article, the motion is read, the presentation is done, prior to town meeting taking a vote, the moderator will ask the Board of Selectmen, do you have a recommendation on this article? And the chairperson will say yes, we recommend approval. That's the significance of this.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. So voting on town meeting warrant article recommendations, as John just indicated, articles 4, 5, 6, and 7 each require a separate motion.
You could do them as one if there's agreement, or you could do them separately, Mr. Chairman.
That sounds fine to me. I'm happy to entertain a motion for the board to recommend approval of articles 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Chair. I move the board vote to recommend approval of Articles 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Second,
Move. I think I got it from Scott Rogers first, but that's fine. Motion by Leslie Rattan, second by Scott Rogers. Any further discussion? Seeing
Just, I
none,
don't
this
know,
is,
if the record needs to show that Article 4 was for the town budget, Article 5 was for water, sewer, and solid waste, 6
Right.
was for the K-8 budget, and 7 was for the Northborough, Southborough regional school budget.
Right?
yes, thank you for the clarification. Yep.
Would you like me to reword those or?
I think that's fine. I think we have the clarification, the understanding of what the motion is, which articles, and what those specific articles represent. At
The
town
articles are, this is as of the posted warrant, so these article numbers cannot change or won't change at this point, so.
Right.
Right, okay.
So if there's nothing further, this is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
aye.
Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Leslie Rattan,
Hi.
and I, Jason Perot, vote aye. Next on the agenda, we have set the meeting schedule for May through August, and you have the proposed dates in the, keep losing my warrant booklet here, in my packet, I'm sorry.
Page 67.
Page 67, there we are. Thank you. Proposed meeting dates for the Board of Selectmen through the summer. As usual, as is customary, we kind of take a little time in the summer for town staff to kind of recharge their batteries, get a little vacation time in, and be able to work uninterrupted on some of the many projects that are continually underway. You'll see here, typically we meet the second and fourth Mondays of each month, and those are shown under regularly scheduled meeting column. Under the proposed meeting dates, we have town election earlier in the month of May, so we just have one Board of Selectmen meeting on May 23rd. We have the two regularly scheduled meetings shown here, June 13th and June 27th. July, a single meeting, July 18th, and August, a single meeting, August 15th. If there's any business of an emergency nature that arises, we can certainly attend to that if necessary, but this has been the convention for our summer session. Any questions? Julianne?
So we decided that at our next meeting, we would discuss the ARPA meeting. And therefore, I think that we should keep the May 9th meeting, which would have been our regularly scheduled meeting.
I respectfully disagree. It's the day before town election or whatever, and I guess I'm not of a mind to preoccupy myself with those details prior to that. Kristen?
I think I'm with you on that, Jason. Maybe if there was a way to squeeze it in after the election or something before the 23rd. I see what you're getting at, Julianne. I understand that the 23rd is a long time to wait to talk about another meeting, which then probably wouldn't happen till June. Like I see the problem. I don't know if there's another way to solve it without having the 9th meeting though. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, we're also not intruding on scheduled meeting days potentially for other boards and committees. Our regular days are the 2nd and 4th typically.
Mhm.
We're making exceptions in the summer months here. In the later summer. Yes, Julian?
So if we don't get this ARPA meeting talked about and then done in May, and we're probably not going to make a lot of huge decisions even in May. Everybody goes on vacation in the summer. Once the kids are out of school, it's, I don't know. I just feel like, would you be more comfortable with the 16th and the 23rd, or even if it's the 16th instead of the 23rd, at least move it up, and then we could have the 23rd as a possible discussion for the ARPA funds.
Other members?
We're working around vacation schedules. I won't be here the week of the 16th, and we've got folks in our office that are going to be out for an extended leave as well. So.
Any other board members wish to comment?
I'll just take a shot, Jason. Thanks. Just so if we next scheduled meeting would be in May to discuss then the format and to potentially determine what the schedule would be for that ARPA input section. I guess we just make sure that it's on the agenda for the 23rd to talk.
Yes.
That's a primary agenda item for the 23rd. And then we'd have the actual meeting probably sometime in June.
Yes, I would want to target early June just so that we try to avoid end of school year. And once again, through these next several weeks, as you know, there's other complicating things going on that we need to give our attention to. Town staff needs to give their attention to. Somewhere in there, we're going to need to look to early June as a time frame for a public discussion. I'm not going to propose a date here because I don't think anyone has any clear idea of what a date would be. We certainly want to try to avoid the end of June just because people are going to be away for the summer and everything, or beginning vacations. So that would be my my understanding of how the time frame would play out. Yes, Leslie?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, it's going to be hard to satisfy everyone. We have to do the best we can to hopefully draw in as many people as we can, different groups and so forth and so on. So, thinking early June is a good idea. I know that, later June into July is probably pretty bad. So I think, as long as people know that we're making a good faith effort to one, give enough notice so people can attend. And if it's, they can put this on their schedule, that people will be satisfied with that. Also, too, I didn't know what the sense of urgency is, too, as far as having it immediately. I know we wanted to, there was a community forum, and I know that we wanted to have a session and include as many people as possible. So, yeah, I think that early June sounds like a good idea before people get truly busy with summer.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion regarding the proposed meeting dates here? Julianne?
Can I just point out that if we only have a meeting May 23rd, and we intend to have the ARPA meeting early June, let's say first or second week, that I'd like to see a good long time that we a lot of advance notice for people to plan around the combined ARPA meeting. So May 9th is sounds better to me.
Okay, your preference is noted. Do we have a motion, or do we need a motion here?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to set the meeting schedule for May through August as follows: May 23rd, June 13th and 27th, July 18th, and August 15th.
Second.
We have a motion by Julianne Hirsch and second by Scott Rogers. This is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
No.
Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Leslie Ratan,
Aye.
and I, Jason Pro, vote aye. Carries 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Next up, execution of cemetery deeds 1142 and 1143.
Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to execute cemetery deeds 1114 and 1115.
I don't think those are the numbers.
Aren't they? That's what it says on the motions.
Was that what it says on the motion? I'm sorry. That is what it says on the motion. Those are not the correct numbers. I apologize. I did not
Oh.
catch that error.
Okay.
The agenda item has us as deeds 1142 and 1143.
I'm sorry. Okay, 1142, and I just read
Yes, I
what's
totally
on my,
agree.
because I print it out
Yep.
every week. Okay, every meeting. All right, so let me try that again. I move the board vote to execute cemetery deeds 1142 and 1143.
Second.
Moved by Kristen Wickstead, seconded by Julianne Hirsch. This is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Leslie Ratan,
Aye.
and I, Jason Perot, vote aye. Apologize for the confusion. Normally, for something like that, I double check the agenda against the motion, and I did not see that.
And I'm sorry too, because you said it correctly to me, didn't you? And then I just ignored
Yes,
you.
yes, right.
I
I'm
just
reading from the
assumed you were-
agenda. You're reading from the motion. So right.
Yeah,
we got
yeah.
we got them all covered.
Right, okay.
All right, very good. Any other business come before the board? Nothing more tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion first by Julianne Hirsch and a second by Kristen Wickstead. This is a roll call vote. Kristen Wickstead,
Aye.
Julianne Hirsch,
Aye.
Scott Rogers,
Aye.
Leslie Ratan,
Aye.
I, Jason Perot, vote aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your work this evening. We'll see you next time.